Let's get to talk about President Trump's two-day summit in China with President Xi Jinping. Elon Musk, Jensen Huang, Tim Cook, and more than a dozen other top executives are going to join the president. Joining us now, Bob Hormats, former vice chairman of Goldman Sachs International, served in both Republican and Democratic administrations in a variety of roles, including under Secretary of State. And going to break, I said, I think you were in the Nixon administration, and I said, no, that can't be right because you're still a young man. But now you tell me, you were 24 years old. You were part of, I guess, the Nixon contingent that met with Mao Zedong.
I didn't go on the Nixon visit, but
you were working with Kissinger, right?
I worked with Kissinger and did a lot of the planning on the economic stuff for the Nixon visit, since I was Kissinger's economic advisor.
I always say when I was alive for these things, I did not realize that Nixon that Mao was still around.
Mao was still around. He was in his 80s, but still quite knowledgeable and thoughtful. And Nixon and Mao had actually some very good conversations. Kissinger, Joe and I did a lot of the planning for the meeting, but Nixon himself wanted to go. He'd been a strong anti-communist, but he also realized that China was a rising power and the United States had to have a relationship with them.
That was a major thing that Nixon did that is causing, I think, his entire narrative, historical legacy to be revisited, or at least it should be, because that was so monumental.
Monumental, and it was Nixon and Kissinger who decided. It was not a popular thing necessarily in the U.S.,
right?
But they realized that this was a rising power, and now, years later,
now we know.
Now we know, and for the first time in nearly 100 years, the United States is negotiating with a peer great power.
Kind of.
Peer great, in many areas, not every area, but certainly from a military, political, economic, and technological perspective, they're the most broadly based competitor and most advanced competitor we've had to deal with in many years, and they have that sense of confidence.
How many people died in the
in the Great Leap Forward?
Yeah.
20 to 30 million people starved.
No food. So that was my point. And what I was getting to with Mao, I'm not an admirer. I'm sorry. People that have a picture of Mao on their desk, I think they have a screw loose. And I was going to ask you whether President Xi is different fundamentally in his view of what he wants to bring to the 1.4 billion people that live there than I don't know what Mao was thinking. I think Mao wanted to make China preeminent, and I think
definitely.
And I think Xi wants to do the same thing. Is it sometimes at the expense of
well, that's
Chinese
a very
people?
good question. Mao had two major preoccupations. One, he kept referring to the fact that we were bullied in the last century by the foreigners because we were weak and divided, and they'd had a civil war, as you know. And second, both he and Xi, but particularly Xi, did a lot of work on why the Soviet Union fell apart. And Xi concluded that it was because the party had gotten weak. They'd become too dependent on a few commodities, particularly steel and energy, but not a broadly based economy. They only had a very few trading partners, and they were vulnerable to the U.S. Xi wants to create a situation where none of those happen. He wants to diversify his markets and his supply chain. He wants to avoid being bullied by foreigners. He wants to make sure that when he does something, he has a united party behind him.
So what's all that mean for what President Trump tries to do?
It means that when President Trump goes there and asks for something, Xi will come back with a lot of confidence that China is an equal or close to an equal on technology and other things, and will stand up to him and has leverage over the U.S. It used to be that foreigners had leverage on China. Now, for the first time, China has leverage over foreigners.
But just how much is I think, a question. So personal GDP in China, $14,000.
Oh, much lower.
Personal GDP in the United States is $90,000.
Much lower.
My point was that whether Xi cares about people has a direct bearing on how tough a stance he takes against the United States.
Well, he cares about two things. One, not being bullied. He cares about China asserting itself
at the expense of his people.
Then that was the second point, and that is the one thing about China is there's sort of a social contract. They, the people, will follow the Communist Party and Xi. But the Communist Party and Xi have to deliver better standards of living. And they have a lot of unemployment, and they have a lot of problems in the real estate sector. And Xi does care about those, which in part is why I think this is going to be a relatively tranquil summit. Xi does not want a big dust-up with the U.S. He has to concentrate on a lot of domestic things.
Then he's playing the long game still, isn't he?
They play the long game.
All the time.
Even Mao in the 50s, when China was a developing country, made the point that we want to be able to catch up with the U.S. to avoid the U.S. pushing us around. And that'll take about 50 to 75 years.
Do you think, I don't know why we didn't book a longer segment, because you're so knowledgeable on all these things, but do you think that there will be some attempt by Xi to get President Trump to change our stance on Taiwan?
Absolutely.
And he's going to try and get...
He will do two things. One, he'll try to get language out of Trump that sort of implies that the U.S. wants to have a peaceful solution to Taiwan.
That includes it becoming part of China.
He won't say that precisely, but he'll make sort of innuendos that say, we understand why China wants to get closer to Taiwan, and encourage the two of them to work out their differences in a positive way. He won't, I don't think, insist that they unify, but I think he will give positive statements that Xi will find helpful. But the other thing is, Xi looks at the U.S. and says, look, the U.S. is overextended in certain parts of the world. We're preoccupied with Iran, which is sort of a semi-ally of China. But now it gives Xi an opportunity to expand China's military presence throughout the South China Sea and the East China Sea, all these little islands or semi-islands or rocks that have been made into Air Force bases, quite extensive, big ones, and that China now has an opportunity. It's not so much to invade Taiwan, but it's to extend its military presence in the region, making it more difficult, in case they ultimately do, for the United States to intervene.
Will the president's predilection to wanting to make deals and trade deals, will that cause him to maybe become too close to China and accept that, let's say they say we're going to invest $1 trillion in the United States? Security concerns be damned. Do we let something like that happen with the allure of a huge investment in the United States?
That's one of the things that Xi is going to test at this meeting.
Should he say yes, or should we not?
I think he has to. We're selling the Taiwanese a lot of military equipment.
Right.
So it's not that we're abandoning them, but I do think that the allure of these big deals made by big CEOs, either in terms of investment on the mainland of China, or in terms of working with Chinese companies to get them to invest here. Well, Trump will come back and say, well, this trip created a lot of jobs here. Or companies that have difficulties in dealing with Chinese regulations, they'll try to work them out. But I think if you talk about awe, you're seeing the top CEOs of the top American companies going there, and the Chinese want to get their economy going. They certainly are doing extremely well from a technological point of view, but they also want to establish more partnerships. What they don't want to do is become dependent on American technology, because their concern is that if they get too dependent on American technology, then the United States can use that as leverage.
For the rare earth stuff that we're dependent on.
And we're dependent on their rare earths, but they don't want to be dependent on our chips, because they see the United States as, first of all, unpredictable, but they see it as a country that would use leverage, perhaps in certain situations. They don't want to be in a position where they're vulnerable.
We're going to see so much written about, half the articles are going to be that we were taken in the cleaners, and the other half are going to be that it was a great deal, and we need you to come back.
I think it'll be somewhere in the middle. I think they want tranquility. I don't think they want to dust up, but they will have controversial conversations over what China is doing to support Iran. The president's certainly going to raise that.
Okay.
And Xi will certainly raise Taiwan and opportunities that he sees for China to play a greater role in the whole Asia-Pacific region, with the Americans preoccupied somewhere else.